Okay, so welcome back to another live stream. A lot more repetition. Look, it's just one of those things that, as I said before, I've been meaning to do for quite a while. And yes, it's really one of those times that I love doing this. Really, I love it. Yeah, there's not much for it except for just getting it done. Yeah, this is the where are we? This is a where are we? This is a chakra pop fortification, so that's the star fortification that you'll see carried over into pretty much all of the pretty much all of the chakra pop have the same style. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to create a black outline around this so that I can then pretty much just port it into paint.net without too many troubles. So yeah, I'm just going to be doing some repetition and keep talking away. So one of the other things I've decided to do is I've decided that inside the town you can see how there's the brown and the grey representing stone buildings. I've decided that I'm going to go in and I'm going to make those ones, I'm going to put brickwork into them. So I'm going to make it so that they're complete buildings rather than just the outline. That's it's a merged cell, 20 by 20 for the big buildings. Yeah, so I'll do that really just so that it comes back to when I want characters to be able to live in the place, that they need to have a little bit more detail than what I've currently got. So it won't be that hard for me to. I mean, they'll be duplicates. I mean, there's no mucking around. I'm not going to individually and personalize and stuff like that. I mean, let's just say that the region's only got one architect who comes to the province and basically assists. It's not really a good sort of solid three-dimensional reason, but that'll do for the moment. The other alternative is that I basically let people redesign after if they ever do find a title deed to a townhouse or something like that, to make it so that they can redesign. I mean, I've already explained that I'm quite happy for there to be upgrades, people replacing doors with ones that have got more elaborate locks. All those sort of things can happen. The main thing is that it can all be personalised, but I'm not going to be doing that. It'll be up to individuals. If they want to personalise, then that's their thing. I haven't got time to make every single building internally look different. I think that there has to be a line in the sand where I go, no, not doing it. Right now, even for me to be doing what I'm doing right now, it's hard to justify. I've got so many other things that are important that need to be done. For example, I'm going to be doing I'll do a live stream on the contract. I may as well, while I'm doing this repetition, I may as well talk about it a little bit more. So the first thing is that in order to provide stability for the game and make sure that people can believe and trust in what I'm doing, You know, if they're going to invest their time and energy in a hobby or a campaign or whatever, I really feel that it's the responsibility of the organisers to provide some kind of trust that it's not fly by night, that it's going to stick around, that it's not just going to disappear in the short term. I want to make it so that people realise that there are ways that you can bring stability into these things, that there's no need to worry with what I'm trying to create. That's 50. Sorry, I'm just talking to myself. 54. So if I go up 54, nope, not even close. So that's not 54. Oops, that is 54. That's it. What I was going to say, yeah, so stability. I can't see any point in having done all this work only for it to be undone by not having in place license agreements and things like deed of assignment, deed of consent. So for those who don't know what those things mean, effectively a deed of assignment is when you are the author of a piece of work, a piece of intellectual property, and you effectively hand over that ownership to somebody else. So what I'm wanting to do is make it so that people can be involved in Renegades and contribute. Now, the authorship of that piece of work remains with the person who created it. So, if you create it, you remain the author of that work that you've created. Means that you can tell people that you've created this piece of work. You can operate as a consultant if somebody else wants to create a piece of work as well. You know, you can work as part of a team of developers on assisting them with their endeavour, you know, within the system. Yeah, there's no problem with that. It's really a matter of when, if at any point that individual decides to leave their involvement with Renegades, it's really important that Renegades can continue to use that information, continue to use that content that has been created. So when people sign a contract, a Renegade contract, what they're doing is effectively it's an acknowledgement that they are going to. It's an acknowledgement that they've assigned their work to Renegades and that Renegades own that work. So it's similar to a computer game developer that might have an intern working on staff, an unpaid intern who is developing some plot, storyline, graphics, whatever, and that individual, while they're working there, is bound by the deed of assignment, so that they can't turn around at the end of their when the computer game is released and then say, well, you owe me for the work that I've done. You know, that's an unpaid intern is, you know, doing that as an unpaid intern. Any employee, you know, of a computer game developer will be paid and compensated for their for the work that they do, but I'm not in a position to pay millions of dollars in getting that kind of product off the ground. This is really a matter of, just in terms of every other LARP system that I know of has always had a problem with who owns the content that's developed, and whether they choose to recognize it or not. They are responsible for, well, they're taking a huge risk by not ensuring that they, as in the organization, should have these kind of measures in place. The alternative is that they could have a costly lawsuit, and the person who has made the contributions can win quite easily by effectively proving that they created the content and that they were and it belongs to them, and it's not. I mean, the courts can basically find in their favour, and in a lot of cases they do, because they haven't signed a document of any kind stating in a legal sense that they have waived their intellectual property rights, that those intellectual property rights were transferred. So an unpaid intern working for a computer game developer will most likely be signing a moral rights, deed of assignment. Now, in addition to a deed of assignment, they most likely will be signing a deed of consent. Now, the deed of assignment is to transfer the ownership of the intellectual property, but even though intellectual property has transferred in ownership, that still does not give the computer game developer the right to delete it or edit it or do anything except for just use it in the form it's in when it was created by that intern. It's extremely unlikely that a piece of work is going to be never going to be changed. So it's always going to need to be available for update and modification. If there's patches that come through for the computer game, the computer game developer is not going to be consulting with every unpaid intern who is working on the project to get their approval on a case-by-case basis. So instead, what the computer game developer will be doing is they'll most likely be incorporating a deed of assignment, as I said, transferring the intellectual property ownership, but they are also going to be doing what's called a moral rights deed of consent. Now, moral rights deed of consent is effectively the same individual who's the author of the content who has waived their rights to the ownership, as in, they've transferred the ownership to the developer. They will also get them to sign a moral rights deed of consent, which is effectively that the author is giving permission for that content to be edited, modified in all sorts of ways, even deleted, things like this. Now, in some cases, the piece of work that the unpaid intern was involved in changes beyond all recognition. It may be that they might have had something to do with the creation of characters in a story, but they don't like the direction that the story is taking with the characters that they created, and so it may be that they will, in writing, they will send a notice to the computer game developer requesting that their name is removed from association with the piece of work. So effectively, they're no longer recognised in the credits, for example. They're no longer recognised as the author in the credits of that piece of work. They don't cease to be the author; they just cease to be recognised for it. So that, as I said, if they don't like the direction that it's taking, then they do have the option of removing their name from it. So they can't be forced to do that, and they shouldn't be. I mean, to me, the entire objective of Renegades having the deed of assignment and deed of consent is purely to protect the longevity of the game, of the campaign, of pretty much everything that I've created so far. I mean, it can work with that, but even so far as if somebody wants to, if I create a non-playing character, a supporting character role, and I ask somebody to play that role, and they do, and it's not just a once-off thing. This is a part of a campaign. So if they get involved and they create some content, they play the role for a period of time, and it's really fantastic sort of work, and then they they decide that they don't want to be involved anymore. Technically, that individual owns the intellectual property for the portrayal of that character, and so it is technically possible for them to have a claim over the intellectual property. So what that means for Renegades is effectively that even the most basic NPC or supporting character role being played at any event, that needs to be some form of deed of assignment and deed of consent that individual is going to have to comply with. We're not talking about just throwaway characters. So if I want to activate any of the NPCs or supporting character roles for a freeform, like for a live event, just by that one thing, that means that that character is no longer my creation. It's been influenced by the person who is portraying it, and so I'm no longer effectively the sole. I'm no longer the sole creator of that. So it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. I mean, people don't necessarily treat intellectual property as with as much respect as it should. We all hear the thing that we get all this when you're watching it, just about to watch a DVD, and you get some kind of government thing talking about, you wouldn't steal this, you wouldn't steal that, as in, talking about intellectual property theft, and most people won't. They won't steal a car. They won't steal from a shop. But when it comes to downloading music, movies, those things, it seems like there's quite a bit of that going on, and yes, it might be. You think about some mindless corporation is the one that's losing out on the due to the theft. But when it comes to funding another series of a particular, like a TV series or whatever, if there's been rampant theft of the product, then it might be that there's not enough legitimate purchase of that product for them to justify a second season. So unless there are legitimate sales to justify investors getting involved in, unless there's enough payback, unless they receive enough of a return on their investment, they won't be doing it again. Now, I mean, the thing is that with, say, live role-playing scene or cosplay scene, things like this, there's been examples of people who have created awesome costume, and they've then found that it's basically being mass-produced. Their pattern, their design, has been stolen, and so they might have created something unique, like off the the plans are in their heads. They've made the patterns. They've invested the time, the R&D, and then only to find that it's being mass-produced offshore for a fraction of the price, and they effectively lose the benefits of all that that research that they've put in, all the time that they've put in is gone. So anybody who takes photos, like portraits, things like this, quite frequently they find that their work is being stolen. It's just a matter of you taking from artists, and it might seem that they charge a lot for their work, but the thing is that quite frequently they've studied quite a long time. They've got a lot of life experience. They've spent, they try to get the right camera angles, lighting, all those things. They've got production values, and then along comes somebody who basically steals that content from them instead of paying for it. So even though it might seem expensive, you're paying for a lot more than just them taking a photo. You're using their thoughts, the way that they think about the shot, all those things. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. There's plenty of other examples. People, they should know how it works, and there should be no need for me to explain more than me saying quite clearly that I'm not going to negotiate. It's I have put in a lot of effort into what I've done, and I'm concerned that if I don't utilize things like the deed of assignment and deed of consent, that everything I've worked towards, well, firstly, will be stolen from me, which I'm not really wanting to happen, and secondly, I just don't believe that it will last. I don't believe that an organization, a group, a company can function without these control measures in place that will prevent it from happening. Certainly I can't stop people from trying to steal, but I can certainly do something about it once I found out that someone has been trying to steal my ideas and do something about it. So first things first, anyone who wants to be involved in Renegades will be needing to sign the deed of assignment and the moral rights deed of consent. There's also things like an NDA, that's part of it, that's built into it. I mean, it shouldn't require explanation, but I will explain it. Fact is that if people are creating content, they're going to have access to information that isn't widely available to everybody. And some of these things, there's been examples where people have invested time and energy in trying to create some kind of secret part of the story, only to find that it gets leaked. So when this information is leaked, it's pretty much totally disrespectful to the people who have created the content. So they effectively have lost the element of surprise, and so so what they've created no longer has that punch, the impact, the payoff, the big reveal, all those things. So yes, it's so it's not a small thing, and so I'm quite happy to have that part of the the inclusion of an NDA into it. So having said all that, how does it work? Well, the way it works is that the people who contribute and create content, they sign a deed of assignment and a moral rights deed of consent over the work that they create. Then they license the use of that intellectual property back. So effectively, they're creating it and then they're licensing back, so that it's a full recognition that Renegade Theatre Company own the product, and that in leasing and in licensing it back, that also means that they're bound by the rules, behavioural things like that. So effectively, they have to play nicely with others. Sorry. Look, I'm doing the best I can with multitasking here, and what I'm talking about is a reasonably complex issue. But people can certainly do their own research. I'm going to be doing a live stream of the contract. I'll be doing that probably on Monday night, going through it in its entirety from start to finish. Just to proofread and make sure that it's all squeaky clean. Then anybody who wants to be involved will be required to sign that. Now, I mean, everyone does it all the time. Whenever they download some software, they click I accept. They don't read what they're signing, they just do it. If they want to be involved in, like, play a computer game, and it says read the terms and conditions, well, effectively what they're doing is they're acknowledging that, part of what they're acknowledging, especially if it's some kind of some sort of game that allows you to carry over if you find loot in some of these games, it might say that the loot can't be sold for real money, so you can't just go and sell off the account. That if you get caught, then you and whoever buys the account can be banned and all those sort of things. So that kind of thing happens all the time. That sort of thing happens all the time, and people click I accept without even slightest hesitation. So I am bringing it up rather than just simply having a click the button on a website. I will have that, but that will be purely as a backup. It won't be the primary form of it's not enough to simply click on I accept, because most people don't read those things. I am talking about different levels of involvement, including some fairly important character roles and with with privileges and responsibilities and duties, and a fair bit more impact on the campaign compared to your average character. So so I'm going to be treating it very seriously when it comes to ensuring that people are not only signing and clicking on I accept, but they're actually, they have a little bit more of an understanding. I feel like I need to explain this and make sure that I'm thorough, rather than just be perceived as trying to take advantage of anybody. What I'm trying to do is make sure that people can't be taken advantage of, and make it so that people can actually trade on their knowledge and experience, so that if somebody becomes a really good content creator, that they can possibly trade on that knowledge and create content for those who might have less natural ability to do so, or haven't got the time to create content. So things that the content I'm talking about is things like what I'm doing right now is massive scale. This is a town, but the same process can be used for creating a tower or a complex of some kind. That a character might come into some wealth that they want to reinvest into protecting their property, and so they might contract somebody to design them an awesome tower, and they'll be using these kind of techniques. So, as I said before, each block of stone having a serial number, things like this. It is a big responsibility to pass on to somebody, but if I have the master document and I can check the master document that any modifications after its creation are done to the master document, that I can do a search on the calculations. I can verify that the calculations are all the same. I can check and see and proofread effectively, make sure that the person who is creating this creating a tower complex or whatever hasn't sort of cheated and made it so that a piece of stonework has the advantages of, I don't know, being twice as strong as other people's stone. It needs to be fair for everybody, and that everyone's on the same playing field. So fair bit of trust and responsibility from even something as simple as building a tower. So I can only hope that people will not try to not try to mess with these things and do it properly, and not try to cheat, because I mean, effectively that's what it is. So there's no mucking around. If you basically provide somebody else with an unfair advantage, then you're cheating. So anyway, so just doing this repetition. There are little tricks that I've kind of worked out. I can copy a block and paste a block of information, a block of just simply black. But the consequences of making a mistake is that the depth, I could make it so that there's some water that doesn't have a depth to it, a piece of stone that doesn't have the random hit points, things like this. So again, I'm trying to be thorough. Undoubtedly, I've already made lots of mistakes that I haven't realised, and all I can hope is that people will pull me up on them as they find these problems. They can just say and let me know, and then I can hopefully adjust it. For me to make changes, it might be that I adjust the master document. That's probably the simplest way. Get the master document's changed, and then in the next time that a person receives an update, it'll be updated with the changes. So it's not, it's not like these mistakes are going to be any sort of. It's not going to break anything. It's not going to be that critical. In terms of things like sieges and those kind of conflicts, well, we've got a lot of peace in this campaign. It's not like it's in the middle of a war zone. It's not like they've just come out of a civil war. The local people, they're not going to stand for some of these bully tactics. They're going to most likely turn against anybody who tries that kind of thing, rather than participate. So I'm not sure if these days there are people who want a stable adventuring game system that doesn't involve mass combat and things like this. To me, trying to create a campaign in the middle of a war zone when you want to have permanent, when you want to have commerce, and when you want to have storyline being the more important thing. It might be that for those who are addicted to combat, it might be that there's people who are not suitable to this storyline. I'd like people to give it a go, but if they don't want to participate in a if they like PvP and don't like PvE, then they may not be suitable for involvement in what I'm doing. So yes, I'm doing all this work to the structures and trying to make these fortifications as real as I can make them for the purposes of the geopolitical system. They're likely to remain untested and not attacked or anything like that. Most likely it's going to be quite peaceful, and Just realised that I have made a mistake, so I'm going to have to undo that mistake. Okay, so we've got 4 there, 4 there, 4 there, and 4 there. Right, what have I done? Okay. It doesn't take much to make mistakes with some of this copying and pasting and stuff. You know, I want to get consistent with these things. Most of the time I can. Okay, so again, I just get it started and then try to make a block that kind of makes sense. Yeah, I don't want to go too far into the stonework over the other side there, so anyway, we'll get there. So yes, it's a little bit of repetition. There's not much I can do about it. All I can say is that really I should have done it properly the first time. So not perfect, but still it's going to be fantastic once it's done. Really looking forward to breathing some life into these fortifications and making it so that there's people living there, you know, real communities, real people. This will be their home, so right. Excuse me. So now we've got to go and do the exact opposite. We've got to work out where we screwed up. Well, sorry, when I say we screwed up, well, the thing is that it's now in reverse. So this one I believe will be easier to do, if I remember correctly. So we basically have we have these angles and things like this. So when I do this one, it should be relatively easy enough to just copy that and then paste like that. And as you can see, it kind of follows down along quite easily. In fact, I can do this one, which I then paste on top of the water, and it follows it all the way down. This is fantastic to do these, but they're not on every facet of the Chakraprop fortification. It doesn't always happen that way. So now there's these cells. I've actually left some of the I've tried to get rid of them, but some of these cells are still merged cells, so that's a pain in the neck. Nope, let's not do that. So let's just do a smaller one. Right. So yep, bit of repetition, but yeah, it's not something that can be just like done. Oh, okay. I mean, yes, there are, as I said previously on previous live streams, there are other programs that are available for fantasy role-playing mapping products, and unfortunately they don't allow you to do calculations. So because they don't let you do calculations, I'm kind of forced to use something that does. So Microsoft Excel allows me to put all sorts of calculations in, and so by doing it with Excel, unfortunately, it means that there are limitations. There are things that you wouldn't normally have to worry about with a product that's designed specifically for mapping. Some of these tools apparently are quite handy with lots of different functionality, and I mean, look, it's always possible that that's a post-production kind of thing that I could do. It may be that I can take the map from Excel, and it may be that there's a compatibility with the porting that you can do. That it may be that I can just simply take the mapping that I've created here and then take it into one of those other third-party programs. So, but again, I can't do everything myself. If people want to investigate some of these things, it may be that we can all agree on using that rather than using Excel. Because this is familiar. A lot of people know how to use Excel. So the people who want to create content, if they want to create a fortification, a town, like their own town, their own village, whatever, if they want to do that, then they may not want to use one of these third-party programs, because it's just another thing that they're going to have to learn how to use, compared to, say, Microsoft Excel, which is, there's so many, so much help on calculations and things like this. I mean, the calculations I've created they're not the most robust. They're not maybe the most efficient. There are people who are fantastic with Microsoft Excel who can do all sorts of amazing things with it that are far beyond what I'm capable of. And I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm bad at Excel. I'm just saying that there are people who know the product more than I do, and so they are in a position to maybe tweak it and make something far better. So you might see I'm trying to do this by sight, and sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. I mean, look, it's not really like I'm having the time of my life doing this, so this is not fun. There's not really any way I can sugarcoat it. It needs to be done. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time. With launch coming up on the 1st of July, I need to get as much of this stuff done as possible so that I can show. Well, okay. Well, the thing is that come launch, I'm going to be launching with 4 provinces. Like all the all the videos and stuff like that I've done previously, all the other live streams, they've all been focusing on the tournament map. And the tournament map is not the live map. The live map is actually 4 maps. Each of the baronial provinces will be represented. So all the things I've been talking about and showing off with the tournament map are going to be replicated 4 times. The geopolitical players are going to have access to all 4 maps simultaneously. So the way that will work is that if a geopolitical player wants to go and campaign in one of the provinces, they just have to move their forces to that province. So it's not so they can just basically chop and change. They could, making it so that using the portal system, they can travel from from province to province. 1 month they could be in province A, and then the next month they could be in province B. So there's not really any anything to stop them from doing that, to make it so that the guild grandmasters, for example, are the guild grandmasters of four provinces. So that's their. So they can't. There's nobody else, no other grandmaster of that variety can be there. So there's not like you can have competing grandmasters. That it's their territory, so to speak. So means all four barons will have to deal with those guild grandmasters, high priests, mercenaries, outlaws, things like this. So anyways, so just takes a bit of time, that's all it is, just a bit of time. So, lots of clacking. Lots of clacking away. But it's all good. Yeah, so the so there's four different styles of fortification. I think I talked about this previously in another live stream, which was the stupidity of imperial rivalries. So the backstory, the story behind these fortifications is firstly that they're completely and utterly over the top for this, isolated province. Why the hell are there these elaborate fortifications out in the boonies? So the answer to that is that there shouldn't be, and that what happened was that when this place was first settled, that the locals who came from these empires, there's the four contesting empires in this region, and the local people were a mixed match of people from these cultures. And so when the locals decided that they needed to have some fortifications to protect them against the occasional brigandage and raid, that individuals made contact with these empires and said, do you mind if you send your imperial architects to have a look at our problem? And they didn't really necessarily expect an answer, but what they got instead was they received the Imperial architects who designed all sorts of elaborate structures, and these are the structures that they created in terms of the plans. But the problem is that then the Imperial architects were saying, "Well, you need to get busy, start building," and the locals were like, "Oh, we'll get around to it." And the architects were a bit dismayed because they'd been told to come here and do a really good job of impressing the locals and providing assistance and things like this, which is all well and good, but the locals weren't cooperating. They weren't going to invest the time and energy that was required to get the job done. They were going to sort of sit on it for a little while. And so when word got back to the imperial capitals that the locals, they're not getting stuck into it. They say they haven't got time or whatever. Again, with the ridiculousness of imperial rivalry, is that the high priests of the court of these imperial courts, they decided that they would come and assist. So what they did was they turned up and then they started building these fortifications for the locals to show off the might and superiority of the imperial court that they represented. Now, that was great. The locals didn't have to build their structures. And then it just got worse and worse, more and more out of hand, that the what started off as being a simple request for architectural assistance turned into this game that was being played. So yes, the expense was all borne by the imperial factions, not by the locals. Each of the fortifications has elementals bound within, so the structures are very strong in terms of defending against not just mundane attack, but also against elemental attack. So the locals were wrapped. Yes, fantastic. But that didn't make them make the locals inclined to become a part of their empire. This region was part of the Samaraji Empire, and the locals weren't interested in seceding. And anyway, so the Imperials went home without really having achieved any kind of diplomatic coup and acquiring a new province for the empire that they represent. And so, yes, since before the War of the Gods, these structures have stood. Alright. So this could be another one of those simple replacement ones, so we'll see. Yep, looks like it. So it's just a matter of me having an eye for it. Oops. Well, that still works, but it's not as efficient as that. So just taking bites, taking bites, taking bites. And so on. That'll do. Can't get them all. Oops. Anyway, so we're getting there. Now, the other thing I realised about the fortified towns is that I haven't done ruins for them yet. So once I've done this one, once I've done this is the second last one. So once I've done that, I will do the ruins. Look, I do want the ruins to be something that can be assaulted in the geopolitical. It is a huge undertaking to do it as an actual live event and actually have people attending an event and spending the entirety of an event trying to smash through and take a fortification back from undead control. It is doable. I'd like to. You know, the thing is, when I say about combat, well, this is theatrical combat. This is not. It's not real combat. It's purely a matter of people understanding that and not having false expectations of what I'm trying to do. It won't be a matter of sneaking in some battle game or things like that. It will be done so that it looks good on camera. So yes, so these structures, part of the problem is trying to replicate these structures in a live environment. So it's not really possible to adequately represent them, due to their size. They're massive, and so it's unlikely to. What have I done there? Let me have a look. Alright, nothing at all. Alright, so that's done. Anyway, so look, it's just another repetitive task that I've just done. There's nothing for it except for just get it done. But as I said, I'm going to be changing some of these buildings to buildings that actually have 4 walls, and they'll have the the individual character, also the individual hit points and the comments fields and things like that. Because I'm absolutely serious when I say that I want to make it so that any of these stone, any of this, these structures, the fortifications, buildings, anywhere there's some stonework, that stonework could be messed with, could be damaged, could be stolen. In fact, but why you'd want to steal some stonework, it's beyond me. But sorry, if there's special stonework, but the cost of removing and extracting a decent piece of stone without anyone knowing, it's extremely unlikely. with ruins, ruined buildings and ruined fortifications, it's a lot easier, it's a lot more possible. So anyway, we'll worry about that later in another episode. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, look, I will complete the last of the towns and be ready to go for the launch. So they'll be incorporated into launch. So anyway, I'll